Marcus, put these full screen up.
Yes, blowing in the wind.
No, Steve, say hi.
I think somebody just asked me to say hi. My connection's a little shaky. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yeah, we hear you.
I'm going to jump off and jump back on.
Yeah, Steve's way up in the sticks today. Buying some. You know where he went?
Well, we started out at Dixon at noon. Then he went one way and I went another way after that.
Did anybody get anything today?
I didn't. I don't know how he
No, he said he didn't get anything.
Nah.
Got to enjoy that beautiful countryside.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll let Steve start it off because he's going to jump off and try to rush over here and come in by 7. Go ahead, Steve.
All right, I'm back. No, just was out with partners today. We went to a few auctions, didn't have any luck, but that's what we do. So a couple of properties sold too high, and sometimes you win, sometimes you just have to show up and play ball. So wasn't last week. We wound up doing 4 deals last week. Didn't happen that way this week, but we still have a couple in the line for tomorrow that pretty high probability chances, hopefully. So we're just watching everything.
4 deals last week. That wasn't a bad week. Well, thanks, David. We'll mute him up. And just to help people with the traffic a little bit, we'll go around the room, introduce yourselves. We have a lot of new people over here. So, hit it.
All right, my name is Jonathan Roach. I'm a data scientist. Well, data scientist turned project manager. I own a rental property out in Murfreesboro, just getting started with this real estate thing. So that's about it for me.
No, we don't do that with everything. Go ahead, who are you?
My name is Julia, and I'm new to Nashville. I'm from Russia.
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, you're good company here.
She's been here for 3 weeks. So.
Oh, my.
Wow.
So she's brand new.
She really is. Great.
My name is Bobby Joe. I work for Nurture Schools while I am in real estate school.
All right, new age.
And I'm not none of those things. I am Mervyn Brown, and I'm a coach, speaker, and trainer with the John Maxwell team. And I have my own business, MKB Leadership Evolution, where I train people through that video. So I hope I can serve you all and add value to you.
Mervyn is also the past president of our Toastmasters, which meets Monday night. Little plug for Monday night at 6:30, right over the hill here. It's a great organization, so hope you guys come on down. I hope you don't count my O's tomorrow. Just sit there for you.
Yeah, so my name is Kazadi. I'm a front-end developer for the Tennessee Border Rejects. I think it's my second week here. Just interested in real estate and doing some investing.
Good deal. Go ahead.
I'm Forrest White in my green T-shirt.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Here to learn.
You still coming back from last Saturday, probably. Irish,
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, you're just stumbling home.
Absolutely. Loving the holiday. 4-leaf clovers everywhere.
And you're an investor.
I am.
Yeah.
Here to learn all I can learn.
There you go. Sir?
My name is Zachary Bocher. I'm a new green mentor, so I'm still trying to, grasp everything and learning, real eager to learn. So
there you go. Oh, there's some bonus. Back table there. Yeah, I guess you're
Tom Litz. I'm a EXP agent and just keeping up with the market, see what's going on in real estate.
John
Martin. I've been real estate admin for a while. Got some green energy homes, and I'm trying to get marketed and set up a model home. So Everybody can buy a house that won't go away.
John's a builder, and we've been working into a project of building affordable housing. Trying to get through the county with affordable housing is almost impossible, but I found 6 or 7 mobile home parks. I got a nice lead on all kinds of mobile home parks in Florida and Georgia. So maybe we'll have to slide south a little bit. We can build those tiny homes down there. But we're going to start building tiny homes everywhere. Because we buy a lot, Les and I and Steve, the rats on the roof. Now they're re-roofing the place. We buy a lot of empty ground, 60 acres, 20 acres. I hate to sell a piece of empty ground right away. We sell fast. And it's a crime to sell this stuff right back out, for land price. If we can put a sign on the thing saying we're going to build this kind of house on there, whether it's a big house, little house, or whatever, you can get more for the land. I mean, any way to squeak a few more dollars out of a deal, that's what we try to teach. Les?
Les Lazarus, an investor, green member, and look to partner with people. And
Les is a master auction buyer. He was our main competition when we started. Steve was doing auctions, so we just brought him in. Work together.
Competition, right?
If you can't beat them, join them, right? That's what we do.
Mary Lazarus, I'm a realtor, and I work with Les on rehabbing properties.
Mary, where's your brokerage?
I'm with Reliability down in Brentwood.
No, well, there's a new girl. We're looking in for a couple of good brokerships. So.
Kathy Carter, and I've been a realtor for 19 years, and I am also with EXP Realty.
All right, and soon to be our speaker here in a few minutes. And over here we have...
Late to the party.
That's right, late, but all right.
The traffic was not friendly tonight.
No.
Larry Cox, from Public State Mortgage. I'm a mortgage lender, been in the mortgage business for over 20 years. But you couldn't tell it by looking at me. Anyway, I'm involved in grain, doing a little buying, flipping, selling, and a lot to learn here.
In the back, or go ahead.
Marina, ring member. Sorry to be late. Applying to get licensed very soon.
There you go. We have another Russian speaking girl here, so you girls can chat. Yeah. We got a lot of Russians around here for some reason. And I'm Mark LaPera, I'm the president of Green, and Steve and I started this, well, we thought of this about 4 years ago, and through hard-fought fighting, we are going to launch April 15th. I like those kind of days. And we're all about training. We're all about doing things the smart way. So many people get into real estate and they do it wrong. They just jump in and you ask the agent. I was talking to her last Saturday night. Hey, so do you think I can get a mortgage? Well, I don't know. We'll call a mortgage guy. Well, that answer might work months. But now they're going to ask you, well, what about, when they're walking around the house, well, what do you think about this? Something wrong with the house. Now, they're not expecting you to be an expert. But if you keep saying, I don't know, we'll call that guy. I don't know, we'll call that guy. I don't know, we'll call this girl. Well, they're going to say, can I have somebody who has some kind of answers? Eventually, they're going to want somebody who's experienced. And if you're new, you better get experience somehow, and that's getting some education. If you're, I don't want to say old, but if you're experienced, well, you might be setting your wages like a lot of people are. I have brokers who've been great brokers for 39 years, $1 million producers, $1 million earners, and yet they don't have a text because they just stopped learning years ago. I'm doing it fine like I am. Now, listen, technology is moving this way, and if we're not following that, then we're sliding back. And these millennial kids are going to jump past. That's why we started Green. So before we get to our speaker, Marcus, can you put up our slide? I want to show you some of the speakers that we have here at Green. Everything is broadcasted. They're live, so you can ask questions. Sort of like this here, people online can actually talk to you. We can see who's online. They can see us. And I saw this platform when I took my master's of theology about 2010 to 13. And I said, Steve, we have to do this. We got to start teaching this because our teachers can be anywhere, teaching to people anywhere. We had people she was watching from Russia. We have people watching from Australia. We have people watching from North Dakota and Florida and Texas.
China.
And China. Yes, we do. So go on, Marcus, kick it up. It's going to be fast. I'm going to try to give you some of these things. That's me. I do a no money down. Why'd you have to stick on me? Oh, Joe Gravy does insurance. San Denise does, he also does a financial advising, sort of like diversification. That's great. Tom does go sailing with me, or I go sailing with him, or what's he do? Oh, he does passive income. Personal growth, if you...
Keynote speaker.
Yeah, see, if you feel good, you look good, you're going to be good. That is our membership director, and of course our own that's impressive. Those teachers that we have here, that's pretty impressive. They're all live. We have a mom that's supposed to be our studios and records a lot of his stuff pre-recorded. We had his friend, a hard money guy, come down and talk. I was there today with a girl. We were talking about commercial real estate and leasing. So we videotaped her today, and she's going to be up here speaking one of these days. So I can put it on the calendar, because our calendar's pretty full up until like August. And that's about it for me. My voice is dying, but I want to introduce Lloyd. But I'd let you introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Lloyd. Lloyd Carr. I'm a wholesaler and a flipper.
Hi, I'm Lloyd.
And a guru. Hey, Larry.
How you doing?
Fantastic.
Lloyd's one of those guys that I tell you about periodically handing checks out. Well, he got a few and he gave a few right in here. Because this place here, we don't work as a lot of those other groups do, where you have some kind of deal and then everybody's elbowing everybody out of the way to rush down to the front to get the deal first. Well, that just causes a frenzy, which raises the price up. We just turn around, we all work together. What the heck, let's buy the price get it at the lowest price, and then we'll split some real profit. That's what we try to do here. That's why our group here is pretty much the A group of the, they might not have the crowds that they do, but we have the quantity of properties. Nobody has as many properties as we do. And we try to buy these properties so our new investors have something to buy. I mean, I know how hard it is for a new person to get that first house. Well, we're trying to develop those first houses we're trying to build those tiny houses that you can buy for $25,000. Literally. Florida, we can buy, property. We buy condos in Florida for $30,000. We get these things, and then we can pass them on to our members, as opposed to teaching you, telling you how to do it, and say, come back next week and tell me if you got anything. Well, that's not training. But anyway, I'm going to pass the baton over to our speaker, which I don't have a whole lot of information on, so she's going to do a lot of the introductions of herself. And I do know the title of your talk, but I'm going to let you say that too, because I've been there. I know that talk. I received this talk, so let us welcome up our guest speaker for the night, Susan. Kathy.
Thank you.
Hi, Kathy.
Thank you. Okay, I brought a couple notes. So my topic tonight, and it may or may not resonate with some of you guys, but in the flip, especially in the flipping world. But I've been a realtor for 19 years. My husband joined me in that about 5 years ago. About 5 years into it. So he joined me in that business, and so we were living great and high on the hog, and then 2008 hit. So we all had who was in the world in that one. For the investors, that was a good time, for sure. I mean, now from an investing standpoint, it's getting a little bit tougher because the prices have gone up, to where they've gone up. But so I love what you were talking about a moment ago about just diversifying and having, multiple streams of income, because we had all our eggs in the real estate basket at that time, just being individual realtors, and we learned the hard way that how important it is to be diversified. So I love what you guys are doing here at Green. But what I'm going to talk about tonight, and I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not an advocate, but what I'm going to talk about is divorce and real estate. How many of you guys have known people who have gone through divorce that have some real estate? Sadly, divorces, 50% of marriages end up that way. And after about 10 years in real estate, I went and took a designated course. It was a new course in divorce and real estate. And my husband and I had been top realtors in Middle Tennessee for about 10 years at that point, won all kinds of sale awards and had been top realtors. And I sat in that course. It was a 2-day course, literally with my mouth on the ground, with things that they were teaching us that I had never thought about educating my clients for, if they were going through a divorce. And I'll share it a little bit. Specifically, there was one of my friends who, through those 2 days of class that I was in, there was one of my friends a year earlier who had gone through a divorce. She had 5 kids and had been married 20 years. And all I could think about through that whole time I was in learning about what some of the things I'm going to share with y'all was, man, I wish I had known this to educate her. And after the second day class was over, now her divorce was final, that she had been divorced for almost a year at that point. I called her, I was like, we need to meet for coffee. And it was, because I just felt like I had to share some information, and it was really too late because she was already divorced. But so, like I said, I sat through that class with my mouth on the floor, and I think I can read without these, so I'm going to try to. So let me just ask you, and let me just first of all preference that I'm a realtor, I'm not an attorney, okay? I'm not a divorce attorney, so I'm here really to give you information. It's certainly not advice, right, about what to do with your real estate if you happen to be going through a divorce. But what I will say is that if you know of people that are going through a divorce that own real estate, that they need to talk to somebody that has the designation, which is RCS-D, Real Estate Collaborative Specialist Divorce is what that is. Because again, top realtor for 10 years, go to this course, my mouth's on the floor going, I never thought about educating my clients about this, and those are some of the things I'm going to talk to you about tonight. Okay, so let me just ask you this. So whether you're a realtor or whether you're not a realtor, say you have real estate and you're married and you're going to get divorced, and a lot of times one of the spouses, many times it's the wife, they want to try to keep the house if they can, because especially with kids, they're already going through enough. They don't want to uproot where they've lived, right? And they don't want to uproot that. So many times, if it's possible, they want to keep the house, and the wife likes to stay in there. Again, not stereotype, but a lot of times it's the woman who wants to stay with the kids in the home, so that they're not already, they're not uprooting where they have been comfortable. So this is only, all the information I'm really going to talk to you about is if somebody is wanting to keep the house in a divorce, okay? So this is just some of the things that I learned. It's not, if they're already going to sell it and they're going to dissolve, their real estate, this doesn't really pertain as much. So it's only if somebody is wanting to stay in the house, which again, many times is the case because with the families, they want to keep the kids in the school till they graduate, things like that. So let me just ask you guys, if that was the case, if somebody was going to stay in the house, how, if they go to, through mediation, how are they going to determine how much to negotiate? How are they going to determine what their equity in their home is?
Get an appraisal.
Okay, get an appraisal. Anybody else?
How long you been married?
Yeah, how long you been married?
How long you been married? Who makes how much? Who has the children? Kind of take all those factors into consideration where the kids are most of the time. I know that doesn't come into play as far as the money, but as far as just negotiations go.
Yeah. So that is pretty typical. What Mark said is really pretty typical, and honestly what divorce lawyers and mediators tell people to do. Go get an appraisal, let's see what the mortgage amount is, and then that's your equity, and that's what we're going to be discussing, right? They might take some other things into consideration, like Bobby Joe mentioned, but that, for the most part, is how they negotiate the equity. So here are and that's what I had always thought, for 10 years in real estate, that's what I would have said to somebody. So the year before, my friend who I was telling you about, she's going through this divorce. She's wanting to keep the house with the 5 kids, and she had always been a stay-at-home mom, so the ex-husband was going to be paying for the home. And so through the mediation, she's texting me or calling me, hey, can you send me comps on my house so she knows what the value is? So I'm sending her all this stuff. I'm just, giving her the information so she can make an informed decision based on the information, that the comps are saying. And so I don't say anything else to her because she's staying in the house, and I'm just trying to help her, right? I'm just trying to help her. So here's the things. There's 3 things I want you guys to think about that I did not think about during that situation that nobody thinks about educating their people on. And there's many more, but these are the 3, what I would say, major things that you've got to think about. So most of the time, they're coming up with the equity based on what you just said, Mark. They're getting the appraisal, they're taking the mortgage, and the difference is what we're arguing over or just discussing here. So nobody typically educates them on, hey, we probably should do a title search on this property. before we decide what the equity is in here. Because, as you can imagine, not all divorces are pleasant, and sometimes you've got one of the spouses that is responsible for, all the bills, so to speak, and so if one of the spouses happen to go out and take a home equity line, we'll just say, out on the property, obviously that's a lien against the property, right? And so if they're not upfront in disclosing this information and nobody's done a title search on the front end, then you're kind of messed up, right? You're negotiating on one number and it could be a completely different number. And so through this, it was an attorney who was a Harvard graduate, and she's a teacher today at Vanderbilt, who was teaching this class. And she just, through the 2 days, we're going over case study after case study, or not study, cases of, where situations have happened with all these scenarios that I'm going to tell you about. So I'm not going to, go into details about those scenarios, but just know that you need to do a title search, right? And I just want to make sure that I don't leave something out on, sometimes obviously there's judgments, there's different things that can be a lien against the property that if you don't do that on the front end, then you could be shorting yourself if you when you're negotiating. Because one thing that she talked about over and over for those 2 days was that once the divorce is done, it's done. So if you're done, your divorce is finalized, and you find this out after the fact, you can't go back and undo it. It's not like you can go back even if things are withheld, because you have a discovery time to be able to do things. So that's one of the things. The second thing is many times, how many of y'all have heard this? Probably if you ever dealt with real estate and anybody divorcing, many times the staying spouse, they will say, okay, you've got to refinance the house. And they might give them 6 months, they might give them a year to be able to get their self up to speed to be able to refinance it, right? So a couple of things happen in that scenario. First of all, again, many times, now you got to keep in mind, and this is nothing against divorce lawyers or mediators, but real estate is not their deal. That's not what they do day in, day out. Real estate is what I do day in and day out. And I hadn't thought about these things on the front end until I learned them, 10 years ago. So one of the things that happens is many times they don't have the staying spouse, we'll just call them, pre-qualified on the front end. First of all, to make sure that they're going to be able to refinance. But the other risk to doing that is, even if they can refinance at the day of the divorce and they've already got approved, what happens if somebody loses their job? What happens if that person gets in a car wreck and then becomes disabled for a period of time? What happens, in those scenarios? And then their situation changes where now they can't refinance the house. And does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you're putting yourself, if you're the outgoing spouse and you got your spouse is staying, and that's the situation that you are working through in mediation, or through your divorce attorney, it's probably not a smart thing for the outgoing spouse. And think about this scenario. If, say, the staying spouse, they're the ones to be paying the house payment, right? They're the ones that are going to be paying the house payment. Well, if you're still on the loan until they refinance it, if they don't pay their house payment on time, your credit's going in the tank along with the staying spouse, right? And so a lot of times what happens also is they'll tell the outgoing spouse, the mediators or the divorce attorneys, they'll say, they will have them quit claim their ownership rights over, right? So we're giving the house to the wife. She's got 6 months, or husband, whichever. We're giving the house. She's got 6 months to refinance it. You just sign a quit claim over. So I can't tell you how many times that happens. Even today, it's like after the fact that I hear about things and I'm like, oh my word, like nobody educated these folks. So I'm dealing with a guy right now that luckily that was an amicable divorce, and his wife stayed, and he was actually paying on the house, but but nobody really kind of educated. So he claimed his ownership rights over, and he was the one paying, so he knew it was being paid. But what if it wasn't a good divorce and she was to be paying and she didn't pay? Well, by quit claiming your ownership rights over, you give complete ownership of the property, but you're still on the loan. If you're on the loan to begin with, just because you quit claiming your ownership rights doesn't take you off of the loan. Okay, so a lot of times people don't understand that. They think, hey, I'm just giving her all the ownership rights and I'm done and free, and they're not. So you can't. So don't ever. Like I said to begin with, I'm not an attorney and I'm not going to give advice, but here I'm going to give advice. Don't ever do that. Don't ever quit claiming your ownership rights over unless you understand the risk that you're putting yourself at. If you're on the loan, you're still on the loan. So you're still liable for the mortgage if you do that. Makes sense? Any questions on that? I know, too late now. I know. So we talked about, that the quit claiming. So the other huge thing that happened, so let me go back up to my friend. Okay, so I go meet with her for coffee, and it was not a good divorce, like I said. I go meet with her, and this had been probably maybe 6 months, maybe a year. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you put yourself out there. I shouldn't say her name. But anyway, you put yourself out there to, a real liability, because he was paying. She'd always been a stay-at-home mom with 5 kids. And I said, you've let yourself completely vulnerable to him. What if he just quits paying? You're going to be kicked out of the house. You got 5 young kids at home. You're going to be kicked out. What if this happens? And so some of these things that we had talked about for 2 days in these classes, she goes, if that happens, I was taken back to court. And, again, it was not good on either side. Well, I'll be darned if not 6 to 7 months after that, he files bankruptcy. She has no idea that happens. She gets served papers that say she has to be out of the house in 2 weeks because he filed bankruptcy. And she had 2 weeks to find a place, 5 kids, she had to be out. There was no retaliation. There was nothing she could do at that point. So even though they got divorced and she got the house to be able to stay and he had to pay for it, in the divorce, her staying left herself very vulnerable to that. So obviously it was a very stressful time to figure out where am I going to go live in 2 weeks' time with 5 kids.
And so the husband failed to inform the wife what was coming?
100%, yes. Okay. There was no communication. Mm-hmm. She had no idea that was happening. Mm-hmm. It was not which I knew this couple fairly well, and I was a little surprised at him because it didn't just hurt the wife, it hurt the kids as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there was no communication until she got served that she had to be out in 2 weeks.
Yeah, the address. Les wants to know where
that was been a while back. I know, where is it? That's been a while back. So, yeah, that house has probably been sold a couple of times by now.
Yeah, we might have bought it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's for sure. But so the other thing, the third thing, so the first thing that you got to consider is doing title search. The second thing you got to consider is getting approved on a mortgage and getting that done on the front end. Don't put that where it can be 6 months or 12 months down the line. And then the third thing that nobody really thinks about educating their clients on, if you're a realtor, is, hey, we should probably have a home inspection done on this house. So as realtors, we know always, I tell all my clients, look, when we have a home inspection, the surprises show up in the crawl space. I mean, if you live in your house, for the most part, the things that are, not working right, the property, where the malfunctions are, those type of things. But always in real estate, where surprises show up in the crawl space, because how many of y'all crawl in your crawl space and check it out? Not very many people ever do. Yeah. Well, you investors all do. Y'all are used to crawling around in crawl space, I'm sure. But, the average homeowner, they don't do that, ever. And sometimes we'll find surprises up in an attic, because again, it's another place, unless it's a walk-in attic where people don't typically just get up and wander around and crawl around, unless you're looking to buy a home, obviously. But if you're a staying spouse and you're negotiating based on just the appraisal minus your mortgage, and you don't do a home inspection, like when you go to sell that property, it's not uncommon that there's going to be an issue that's happening in the crawl space. Because a lot of times we come across water issues that have been going on that you don't know about, structural issues that have started to happen over the years that you were unaware of? Because they don't always show up on the walls on the inside. Many times it starts in the foundation right below. And you see that on the inside of the walls of the crawl space, not just the inside of the walls of your house. So I had another situation, and I didn't even know these folks got divorced, but this was years after I had gotten this information. He called me up, hey Kathy, I'm transferring. He and his wife had gotten divorced. I didn't even know they'd been divorced, like I said. Well, he tells me, he said he bought his wife out, and this was a small house in Smyrna. He buys her out. They do the typical appraisal minus mortgage. He buys her out, gives her $30,000 for equity because that was what they negotiated on. And it was about 3 or 4 years later that he gets transferred out of state. And so we go to sell the house. Well, we end up, so he had taken a second mortgage out on the house to pay her the $30,000, right? So now he has a secondary loan on the house to pay her. And when we go to sell the house, he literally walks away, I think, if I recall right, with like $1,000. Tommy paid his first and his second off. And he was like, that sucks. I just gave her $30,000 34 years ago in equity, because that's what it was. And it wasn't, in his scenario, it wasn't because any craziness showed up and, with repairs, or there, weren't any title things that he didn't know about. But you got to think about that too. Like if the market changes, like right now, if somebody were getting divorced and they're disputing over what the equity is, and they use that, forget it, they don't do what it is. Right now, everyone's equity position is pretty high because our values are, have been gone up so much. Right, but what happens when the market readjusts again, whenever that happens? What if it were 2008 and the staying spouse who maybe kept the house, right, they got to keep the house, they're going to go sell it in 3, 4, 5 years. And the outgoing spouse, now they buy them out for a good amount of equity if we're doing it right now. Makes sense. So there's so many components that go into deciding what the true value and what the true equity is in the home. And if people just go into it educated, many times they'll be like, you know what, we just need to sell it so we know what we're dealing with right here on the front end. Like I said, this is if somebody's trying to stay, so you just want to make sure that they have done the proper channels and make sure that they know that they're not going to be stuck later on. One of the case studies that she talked about was, and she actually had several of these, but with this home inspection scenario, staying spouse stays, 3 years later, the kids graduate, she goes to sell it, right? So she buys it from them, she refinanced with all in her name, all of that, but they do a home inspection. She goes to sell it, it's 3, 4 years later, and sure enough, there was some pretty significant structural issues that had started happening, and to the tune of like $40,000. And thankfully for her, she had the equity to be able to do that. But again, back up, she negotiated not on that $40,000 that she was going to be out when she sells it 4 years later because of these repair issues. So again, she really negotiated unfairly for herself because she wasn't educated. She didn't educate herself on the front end, and nobody had told her, hey, you really should be doing a home inspection. So those are just, some of the things. I mean, I'm very passionate about educating people on this because I've seen too many people myself, after learning all this over the last 10 years. I've seen so many people just burn, through it because they weren't educated themselves on the process. So, do y'all have any questions? Happy to answer any questions if you do. I know maybe for a lot of your investors this isn't maybe applicable so much, but
we have some young guys here, probably newly married, and they say, "Well, heck, I don't have to worry about that." But, and Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of times people, when they go get their first house, they go into the mortgage person, and the guy or the girl makes a good bit of money, but the mortgage person, to make sure that the loan goes through, so they get their mortgage and they get paid, they'll ask for, hey, okay, give me your spouse's information. You can say, no, I want to be on myself.
Yeah.
And run it through with me. And that puts you alone in the house, which does a couple things, because now if you need to buy a car or a second house, then she can buy the house with her credit. Instead of, because if you don't, you're both on that credit, and then when you try to buy that second house or the investment house, they'll say, oh no, your loan to value, it's too much or whatever, because your spouse is on that other loan. So you don't always have to buy the house in both people's names.
Larry can talk about that more. I mean, he's the lender, but I do stay pretty involved in understanding the mortgage things for the last 19 years. And that is right. If one of the spouses qualifies on their own without having their spouse to be on the note, then the loan can be in the one person's name, but the deed can be in both parties' names. So that happens a lot of times. Like sometimes even the spouse's credit's not good. They can't be on it even if they want to be on it. So I always joke with my clients, because by this point I've gotten to know them quite well. And so at the closing table, when that's happened, I'm like, see, now you get the best of both worlds. He or she's fully responsible for it, but you get half the house, If y'all, when y'all go to sell, it's kind of, I kind of joke with them, because, you can both be on the deed, but you don't both have to be on the mortgage.
Yeah, and that's a good way for people who...
And that's a good point to me, if you have, for sure, if you have desires to invest into other real estate. So you have your permanent home, but if both of you are on the mortgage, and Larry, you can chime in, but if both of you are on the mortgage and this other spouse that's not on the mortgage has good credit, has good income, then they can go out and buy their own, right? It doesn't count. Their own property if they
can buy an investment property.
That's what I'm saying, an investment property, using their income and their credit.
Plus, they can use the equity of the house, since they're half owners of the house, as proof that they can get the the next house.
All that.
So it's a win-win
investment.
And that's the reason why Steve and I started this, because these are some of those mistakes that I've made.
Yeah.
And that's why when I heard that you were going to speak, I said, it's perfect. It's 9 years ago since I was divorced in 2009, right after the crash. And, she didn't want any of my investment properties, which were all in foreclosure anyway. So I took all those and she took the house.
Yeah, but that could have been very different.
Yes.
And that had it been a high market like now that you were going through that probably would have been a different scenario. And again, you would have probably done what you said to start, like, hey, we'll get a mortgage. I mean, we'll get an appraisal and take a mortgage. And the difference is, what we're going to divide up here in some form or fashion. So, yeah.
One of the things too, this lady had 5 kids, was a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
Probably hadn't worked in minimum 10 years.
That's right.
Whatever.
That's right.
You verify this with Larry too. She's not going to get a loan.
No.
They should have negotiated something, put into the court in the decree that he had to keep paying that for at least 5 to 7 years.
He did have to. He did, but then he filed bankruptcy. He did. Yeah, he did. But he filed bankruptcy, and she literally. It's funny. I haven't seen this lady in probably 5 years, and we ended up connecting. She's actually looking to buy. She went to nursing school, and I'm so proud of her. After all, now her kids are all grown, and everything. And but she went to nursing school, and now she, reached out and said, "Hey, I'm looking to buy a house later this year," type thing. And so we reminisced about a lot of, life, because we were very close for many, many years through a lot before that and during that. And anyway, she was saying, literally, it was just an ongoing battle for them. Even after the divorce, after he filed bankruptcy.
They probably could put in the thing too that he could not do a voluntary bankruptcy. They can't stop involuntary. They could probably stop voluntary.
And I don't know, all that.
She was in bad shape.
She was. And I realized coming out of this 10 years ago, I realized, I'm like, man, she has put herself in a major vulnerable position, but what I also didn't realize, because, I've been married 33 years, thankfully, and haven't been through this, and don't really get into a lot of people's personal business, when they're going through divorce. But what I didn't also realize is so many people, and I think the state of Tennessee requires mediation, right? They require mediation, and a mediator is just like a facilitator in real estate. They don't represent either party. It's like they're just trying to bring the parties together to come to some sort of agreement. So they're not allowed to give advice because they're not attorneys. And so all they're trying to do is bring the two parties together to come to an agreement. Like, how are we going to settle this, the house? What are we doing with the kids? All these other things, right? So many times through mediation, nobody has anyone that's giving them advice, because the mediators, I don't think, are allowed to. Just like real estate, or a facilitator, we can't give them real estate advice. We can just be, hey, I can write the deal up. How much do you want to offer? Legally, I can't give them advice if I'm not representing them. And in, with the state of Tennessee requiring mediation, these people are going through mediation all the time through a divorce, and nobody's educating them on anything, let alone the house, right? Nobody's their advocate to educate them on things like that. Instead, it's like, yeah, we'll agree with all that. Well, no one says, you just let yourself sit in that house with your pants down. And she just one of probably thousands of people that happened to, on just one scenario.
So I just Googled whether or not alimony payments and child support have to be paid through bankruptcy or after, and it says that they do. That bankruptcy does not absolve a person of those.
Well, I think in her scenario, he was just required to pay the house payment. So he put all that in bankruptcy. So he still had to pay her because she was getting alimony and all. But I guess in their, again, I didn't get into details of their specifics with her, but all as I know is she was like, I was served and I had 2 weeks to get out because he was responsible for paying the house payment. He was still on the house too, I think. Like, it wasn't like he didn't even quit claiming his ownership rights over to it. So he not only was paying her alimony, but he was also responsible for paying the house.
So he was he paying her alimony and child support?
I don't know. Like I said, I didn't ask for all this.
So he probably stopped making the payments and just never told her.
He did.
He never told her.
That's exactly what happened. Yeah, he just quit paying. And she didn't know that they were months behind, and then she gets, the house was being foreclosed on. He's filing bankruptcy, But no, he continued, really all through the kid's life paying her. It was a battle. Like, she had to take her to court all the time to continue getting that, alimony just to survive, But the house was long gone.
So you mentioned earlier that the husband probably should not quit claim the house. What is the ideal, and what is the best practice for divorce as far as the real estate goes?
So this is my opinion, okay? This is my opinion, is just sell the house. Because then you're not, and because then you're not, neither party has left themselves vulnerable to an outcome, right? So if you sell the house, then you're free and clear, both of you, from that house. You're going to decide how you split that equity, whether it be how long we've been married, how long we've been in it, was it his house before you came along, you know what I mean? So they decide how, it's not always just 50-50 because you're married and that's the equity. But, in the end, what I think, and this is just being a realtor, is just because of all these potential pitfalls, the easiest and cleanest way, because usually when people divorce, they want to be their separate ways. You don't want to always be tied and having to argue over different things and whatever. I mean, sometimes you got kids, and that's one thing in and of itself. But then if you have a house that you've added into it, it messes things up many times, even more. So it's just easier to cut the ties with the house and be done and sell it.
I have another question. If you have a married couple and let's say the husband decides to invest in several properties using his own money, and the wife has her own income, and let's say they have a comparable income, does she still have 50% ownership?
I don't think it's 50%, and then that's more of a lawyer question. But they definitely have ownership if they're married. But I don't always think it's 50-50.
If you're married, it's 50-50.
I think I've heard a lot from a couple of lawyers.
If you buy it after you get married.
After you're married,
yes.
Okay, yeah.
But before is different. Yes.
Oh, okay. If you owned it before.
Yeah.
Buy it after you get married. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
Whatever, she owns half.
Yes,
property.
I think that is correct. I missed the after.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, but if you had it before, I don't think it's just always 50-50. They look at the courts, the judges have a lot of different variables.
That's correct.
Very good.
Yeah.
What do you think? So just to recap, don't get married.
Oh, no.
Did they say that loud?
No, did you hear what I said? I was married 33 years, so PIN manager, you found the right one.
That's right. Yeah, and we're from Philly, and we don't like people crawling around our crawl spaces. Things down there. We don't want to. Like the other ex-wives. I just want to know where they moved to. That's what we try to bring here at Green. A little fun, but just, we like to open doors. We don't tell people what to do. A lot of times, we like open doors for people and many different areas of things that you're not going to get an education on anywhere else. We talk about education, if they got education before. How valuable is that? And when should you start getting it? I mean, what's the excuses of people not getting properly educated are endless. They don't have enough money, don't have enough time. I'll start tomorrow. There's no tomorrow. We're doing deals every day. Every day you don't get education, you lost another deal.
Yeah.
Right? You just did a deal. You do a deal? I'm working on it?
Working, man. I'm working.
Lloyd just did a deal. You guys just did a deal. I mean, literally, 10,000 a deal, 20,000 a deal. That's what you're losing. That's just one deal, one day. So there is no excuse why you shouldn't get education. And on that, I'm going to bring up my partner, Steve. Marcus, talk to your girlfriend later. I'm going to bring up my partner, Steve, and he's going to finish out the night. So, Steve Chasen.
So, thanks everybody for coming. Occasionally I'm out looking at properties, doing auctions, and running a little bit late here, but we're usually in pretty decent hands. Kathy, thank you. I've known Kathy for many years. In fact, we were agents together at Keller Williams before she went to EXP and I went to Exit. And so Kathy's got a lot of knowledge in the real estate business. And definitely a good resource for anyone on the agency side. If, I know we have agents here, but she brings a lot of experience. And, part of what we do, as Mark mentioned, is we try to educate people on things that aren't just purely the investment side. So we're bringing some things to light that you don't always think about when you're engaging in real estate transactions and stuff that you need to know. One thing I want to really hit on that is very important that I think everyone that's involved in real estate, or whether you're thinking about it, you're kind of on the edge, you're flirting with the idea of investing, you're thinking about buying your first home. This is the largest investment that most people make in their lives. Now, one thing I can say, and I can say this with absolute certainty, is I probably helped save many couples from divorce by giving them absolutely fabulous deals where they took a lot of financial stress off their lives. I built my real estate business that way. I sold 250 HUD houses. That was my specialty. So I learned their algorithm back in the day, and it's still somewhat predictable, but there were some things that you could do back then that were a little trickier in the bidding process. And so I built my business as a real estate broker in the value-oriented side. In other words, working with people who wanted to find value in their homes. And I was able to help them find value. And actually, Mark was one of my clients 10 plus years ago.
It didn't work. But then again, I bought 130 houses. We used to find
houses in East Nashville for $30,000 that people are paying $250,000 for a day.
You didn't buy enough fast enough, Steve.
Yeah, I had the same problem. Mark rolled into town in his Lincoln with two little Bijans and got out of his car and just said he wanted to buy everything in sight. And, that was what he did back then. It was fun. It was fun.
But things have changed, and like anything, you have to grow and evolve. And value is something that you need to understand. And so where I'm going with this is ultimately what we do here. The education is not just, we have a director of education, Dr. Molinari. Andreas, say hi. He's in West Palm Beach, Florida. He does our online training for the paid component of this business. What we do here is free. But the kind of education you get as an entrepreneur, the kind of education you get that really helps you understand what things are worth, how to trade, the mindset of doing business, a lot of it's experiential. This is a contact sport. You have to talk to people. You have to engage people. You have to look people in the eye. You have to understand their motivations. You have to understand people's behavior, okay? You don't do this by sitting at home on Wednesday night watching TV because you're too tired to drive out and learn something new or meet a new person, okay? You do this by getting out and meeting a new person. You do this by getting out and looking at the house, calling the real estate agent, finding out what's for sale. So what we're doing with Green, as you guys know, it's a network marketing company we're about to launch. Green is building culture for real estate, okay? Green is a place where you come and you meet other people who share the same passion that you might have. If you have an entrepreneurial curiosity, if you want to flip houses, if you want to build your professional network, if you are a recruiting agent for someone like EXP, and you want to bring more agents who have a passion for real estate or people who are getting their license, and we have several of them here, and several of them have moved to companies. Ultimately, you should run your own meeting like this, and that's what we encourage, and that's what we'll see nationwide as this thing grows. So I certainly encourage any of you guys who have not gotten into what we're doing on the network marketing side to seriously consider it, because a spot in the downline is good, and it's about to start growing like crazy. But what we do here is free, and we want everyone to come every Wednesday and try to bring in new speakers and add some value and some perspective. But ultimately, what you want to remember is it's all part of culture. Everything that you do in your life every day, the people you meet, the places you go, the connections you make. I mean, it's part of engaging with other people. It's kind of education that you just don't get by reading a book, and they certainly never taught it to you in school, and they're never really going to. Yes,
Andrea, see what he has next week.
Mr. Dr. Molinari, who do we have coming up next week for Green?
All right, I'm going to give you the lowdown on the next several weeks, actually. Next week, March 28th, we have Darren Hickman, and he's going to be giving a talk about what real estate investors and realtors need to know about odor control in the properties that they purchase. April 4th and 11th, we're going to have a series, a two-part series, offered by Tish Baldwin, who is a title attorney. So that should be interesting. And then April 18th, we have Daniel Perry, who's an attorney at law, specializing in trusts and real estate investments. And then finally, April 25th, we have Deborah Bishop coming. So that's our immediate foreseeable future for the next little over a month.
Deborah's topic?
I'm sorry?
What's Deborah's topic on 25th?
You know what? I don't have that down in my notes. I realize that that's a gap in my, I'm going to have to find that out.
She's trying
Deborah's
to
like a
image
personal
control
coach,
back,
you know.
and that's some personal. You never can outgrow people.
That's it. You can never outgrow your own image.
Inner image authority. That's what it's on the anyway, guys, if those of you who haven't joined, if you're interested in joining, let me know. We always want everyone to exchange cards, meet, greet, talk business. Kathy, we'd love to have you join. I think you'd enjoy this company. We're going in the direction I think that would, particularly for EXP agents. I think Tom can attest to that just a little bit, but it's a good compliment. Like I said, we're here to build real estate culture. But for anybody, we do our online training. We'd love to have you be a part of that. Some of our guys that are out there mentoring online, Larry's one of our trainers.
We'll teach you about mortgages, stuff that you just don't get every day. And it's all for a price that you can't really come close to finding on the open market for this kind of stuff. So, like I said, we want to be respectful of everyone's time. Meet, greet, shake hands, talk. We'll be open for another 30 minutes, and then we'll kick you out. So, everybody, thank you.